Today we're taking a look at a new to me and probably new to you interview on Fallout 76. This is going to be between GameStar and Pete Hines. The reason I call this a new to me and probably new to you is because this interview is actually a few weeks old at this point. It came out on August 22nd or was live streamed on that date. It seems like most of the audience on this one was German, and the video right now sits at just under 50,000 views, so I think it's fair to say most people haven't seen it. With that being said, there's actually a lot of very interesting information in this, and the reason I found out about it was I kept finding people referencing certain things that were only said in this interview. I do want to commend GameStar on this though. A lot of the questions that were asked by the host on this were things that I think a lot of us were wondering. So things start off looking at the beta. They describe it as something that everyone is going to get into for a week. That is seemingly a confirmation as to the length of the main beta for this game. And there's invariably going to be a caveat with this. If you guys don't know, the beta for Fallout 76 is going to be first on Xbox One. So is that week including the timed exclusivity on Xbox One, or is that going to be a week for everyone? The way he words it here, it seems like it's going to be a week for everyone, and then Xbox One users may actually get additional time on top of that. So let's say 10 days. This is just a hypothetical. And even going beyond that, he actually mentions how there's also going to be pre-betas or kind of closed betas, I think is a more accurate way to say this. They're going to be invite only. It seems like it's probably predominantly going to be for press and influencers, but also will be inviting people that do sign up for the regular beta. So if you have a beta code right now or have pre-ordered the game, then you may get invited to the closed beta beforehand. But even beyond all of that, he also says that everyone right now in the company can play the full game. And again, this is taking place on August 22nd. But in addition, they're inviting people from outside of the company in waves to play the game between August 22nd and October. It's likely that this Game Informer article we recently saw was a result of that. Game companies typically do that. Sometimes they'll have events for YouTubers. But either way, as a result of this news, I think it's going to be a pretty safe bet. We see a bunch of third-party sources reporting on and actually getting inside looks at Fallout 76. I think this is particularly cool because we'll get to see the game from other perspectives, not just from whatever Bethesda releases from us or their own development team. Obviously now, 3 weeks after this, we don't have a ton in that category. We honestly only have the Game Informer article, but I wouldn't be surprised if in the coming weeks we get more and more of it, which for me is really exciting, and potentially will be for this channel also. With Fallout 76, Bethesda has talked a ton about environmental storytelling. That's something we've seen in previous games. I've made some videos looking at this, but sometimes with environmental storytelling, the way certain props are set up are integral to that story, naturally. So the question kind of arises of what happens if someone like throws a grenade in one of those settings and ruins the thing? Well, basically, it seems like some of these environmental stories will be unmodifiable. They'll be there, and you can't actually affect them or move the components of it. He goes on to explain that some things are going to be affectable by multiple players, but other things will be unique to each player, like container loot. He does describe container loot as being for each of us. Like each individual is going to have a certain amount of loot in that container. But then for other things, it will be seen and affected by all players. If you see a dead Deathclaw, that might have been from a player that passed through here earlier, and although it will eventually despawn and things will revert, you will see the environmental impacts of other players at least somewhat. So Fallout 76 is a game where you're going to connect to a server when you play, but basically the way it's described is it's very hands-off. You don't really see the back end, you don't select a server to connect to, and at the home screen you don't see what region you're in or anything like that. You just click the big play button and it'll automatically connect you. Something the game will also do though, let's say one of your friends or somebody on your friends list is also playing Fallout 76, it'll put you in that server automatically. Of course, there has to be free slots or things like that, but you're not going to be in like a squad or a group with them. You'll just be on the same server as some of your friends. I personally think this could be kind of cool. Let's say you're playing the game and just like, oh wait, I literally know that guy in real life as you walk around in Fallout 76. Creating interactions between players without necessarily intending to. It's just naturally going to do that based on the way server connecting will work. And also just in general, Pete Hines doesn't give explicit examples, but he does say the game as a whole is kind of designed that you can very easily jump into another instance to play with other people. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to team up with others, even if you don't know them. I'm not sure if this has been mentioned before, but a minor detail, when you die, you drop your junk, and that junk will actually drop in a container, so it's not going to scatter around like how dropped items in Fallout 4 work. A concern that I've seen a lot of people raising recently that does get addressed addressed here is on PvP and like hardcore PvP players. Some people play these online survival games with the focus of PvPing in mind. That's the main appeal to them. With some of the anti-grief and anti-PvP systems in Fallout 4, it is seemingly going to be fairly limiting to players like that. On this, Pete Hines says a few things. First and foremost, this isn't a game meant for those 100% PvPers, people that only want to do that. And right now, basically the way it's going to work is if you want to go that playstyle, you're going to have to roleplay as that kind of character. If you're consistently taking down other players, you're going to have that reputation in the game and it's going to treat you differently. He basically described it as almost a form of roleplay. But also he kind of expanded on it to say that if there's a ton of players that really love the PvP aspects of this game and they feel like it's not being fully utilized, PvP dedicated servers is something they could add in the future. In other interviews, they've talked about actually creating like 12-on-12 team deathmatch servers or maybe as a separate game mode. And the way Pete Hines describes it here, he seems like he's being pretty genuine. Like I think if a lot of people in the community were wanting this thing, Bethesda would add it. It seems like that's the approach they're taking with this game, to be fairly open-ended and add things as they're requested. On companions, right now Pete Hines actually says there are no companions in the game. This might be something that's changed between now and release, but he says if you want a companion, play with one of your friends. This is pretty interesting because I actually speculated we would get robot companions back in this game because in one of the trailers you saw what looked like somebody crafting a robot or having a robot companion. I don't think he's lying here, but it also makes it really curious as to what this clip from the trailer is in accordance with. Like, what is this showing if it's not a robot companion? Just a random robot that happens to attack somebody you also attack, or someone that's an enemy to you? They also go a little bit more in depth on how moving your camp around will work. Basically right now, if you place your camp down, you can move it at any time. It'll have a caps cost associated with it, but also let's say you joined one of your friend's servers, you can place it back down. But how is that going to work as far as like, you know, sometimes the terrain will change. If you are on a flat terrain before and then you go onto a hilly terrain, is everything just going to be floating? Well, basically Pete says that the way it works is you place down the camp device first, the little machine that opens up. And then from there, all the items or objects you had placed down will basically blueprinted, so you can place them down each individually. Almost like you get a credit for everything you had previously, so you could place all those items back down for free. And although I think this is probably the best solution to this problem, I can find it being kind of frustrating to have a nice camp set up, then actually join a friend's server, and having to place everything down again seems like it could get a little frustrating, especially if you're moving around a lot. I know a bunch of people plan to play as nomads, and this system may make it so they would much rather play with smaller camps than larger ones. Then we get a bunch of answers to questions that are like no's or not definitive, but they are questions I know people have been wondering, so I wanted to address them. As far as actually being a radio DJ, like having your own radio station in the game, he says he actually doesn't know definitively whether or not you could do that, but he's never seen anyone do it thus far. But we have seen in the trailers you can actually play instruments together, and what he says is these instruments will actually sync up, similar to how it works in Sea of Thieves. So let's say you're playing an instrument and then one of your buddies jumps in, they're not going to be two like competing sounds, it'll actually go together into a nice melody or song of some sort. People are asking about RP servers or how there's a pacifist flag in the game. Is there going to be an RP flag of some kind? As of right now, no, but again, it's one of those things that they could add in the future. On the question of private servers, it really didn't seem like he knew much about how they were going to work. People asked about like changing the maps on the server, if you could have a totally different map that a fan created. And we got no definitive answers outside of the fact that private servers will exist in a cloud. And then finally, there was the question of whether or not the next Fallout game would also be single player, and he said they're not sure yet. There's a lot of games coming out between then and now, that being the Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield. So all in all, I actually think it was a very interesting interview, especially because it wasn't getting a ton of attention, but I think it's a lot of interesting details. The beta's length in particular, I'm not sure if we actually had a concrete answer as to how long the beta would be, but I know I saw some people speculating it would be a month-long beta for all of October. Now, I never personally actually believed that. I mean, I kind of always thought it'd be around a week. I think it's cool that we're getting some clarification, and some people with unreasonable expectations of this game are getting grounded. Either way, as always, again, I thank you all for watching. I'm very excited to get to play this game. I'm very excited to get to share more about Fallout 76 in the coming weeks. But with that, as always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.